I'm really excited about this next speaker, David Jacks. He's going to really introduce to you some really awesome strategies for today's summit, the Courage to Heal Summit. David, take it over.
Hello, I am so glad to be here. Thank you, Lima. Um, Lisa, very tough act to follow. She was amazing. So, a little bit about me. First of all, I always try to do my best to be authentic as possible. And so, I'm just going to start off asking for a little bit of grace because I messed up. I knew we had to present a few different tools. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of an interview than me just speaking, but I should be all right. I got my bulleted list and a timer, and that's all I need, and just a little bit of grace by you. But it'll be great. I'm committed to give you some real value here. So about me, hmm, I have two different coaching certifications. One is from IPEC Coaching School, and the reason I chose IPEC was at the time it was the only spiritual based program that was accredited by the International Coaching Federation. And then I also have credentials from Dr. Daniel Amen, and I'll get into that in a minute. But my story is really like so many of ours, where look, I had an abusive parent or a dysfunctional home, and I want to talk about how dysfunction and or trauma is the cause of mental illness, and therefore, if you want to heal, you need to go after that cause. Okay. And unfortunately, the vast majority of us who took the Western medicine route were pointed in the wrong direction and told to focus on our symptoms rather than the cause, which makes us a customer or a client. You see, they practice medicine, right? They do so by prescribing medicine. So if you took on the cause, of what caused it, well, then they could lose that customer. Um, but in any case, yeah, my father was abusive. My father was narcissistic, and his narcissism was very specific in the sense that he had some empathy. Like he had empathy for people if they got cancer or they lost a bunch of money. Where he lacked empathy was specifically toward people with mental health issues, um, addicts and people with mental health issues. And he treated me my whole life like my inability to get good grades was a character flaw rather than the reality that my brain needed some help. And so, I grew up just being asked if I was an idiot every day. And he was very hyper vigilant. We called him hypercritical. Like he had to know every single aspect of my life, and then he would criticize it. And then when I go to so anyway, the first time he scared the crap out of me, I was 4 years old. The first time my father really scared me. It was a holiday. We had people over at the house, and everybody was talking. I say it's a little bit like the racial draft in the Chappelle show, if you ever watched Dave Chappelle, because all my elders were comparing the Jews to every other group of people. And I asked a question and got kicked out of the room. And then a moment later, my father erupted. Um, Basically, my mom had just gotten out of the hospital and she didn't want to host this holiday. My father overran her, and then he was asking her for help, and he went off. And the way he screamed so loud. One day, the next door neighbor called, even though all the doors and windows were shut in our house. That's how loud he could yell. And when he did that, that was my first time ever having a freeze response. And I said, "Oh my God, how could you leave me here with this maniac when my other protector just ran away. Because after he screamed at my mom hobbled into the bedroom, and so that was my reaction. God, how can you do this to me? Now I'm left just with this guy, this maniac. And I got a response in the form of energy, and it was my first contact. And it just said, "You got me." And then somewhere along the line, I made a deal with God. We have an agreement. If you heal me, if you help me heal, I'll turn around and I'll heal others. And so that's why we're here today. Um, but yeah, the first time I went to the psychiatrist, I was 18 years old, and he talked to my parents first before me. It's hard getting parents to treat you like an adult when you have an abusive or dysfunctional house. And then he calls me into the office and he says, "Dave, I want you to know that you had depression and it's not your fault. Um, your grandmother had it and killed herself." And so that was how I found out that my dad's mother killed herself. And that was the thing that he never got over. And that was his trauma that created his narcissism. He was going to control everything. He was never going to feel that way again, et cetera, right? Um, but that was a huge defeat for me. Like now we've gotten better. I think through COVID and everything, there is a silver lining. It's that we're aware of how much abusive relationships affect us. But I couldn't get anyone to take me seriously about how abusive my father was. Um, anyway, so that's how I found out about the suicide. And my grandmother committed suicide. And I was given an antidepressant, and it made me feel worse. And that's because I was really upset. And my real problem was I couldn't relax. I couldn't sleep in that house because I was wondering what happened that day that if my father found out about it, he would scream at me or punish me or whatever, like, or what was coming on the next day that I had to do well enough to not get in trouble. You know, my father's had a crazy temperament, and it was my responsibility to keep him calm, apparently. And the only way I could do that was by getting grades better than I would felt really physically capable of getting. And so there's that. But anyhow, so that happened. I'm put on antidepressants and it takes my worst symptom, which is insomnia, and it makes it worse. That's the side effect of Paxil. But at the same time, he scared me into believing if I stopped taking the medication, I would get worse. And this is where Dr. Amen says, calm first. If not, you're making them worse. So I was upset. And what I needed was increased GABA and decreased cortisol. Parents, back off me. Let me breathe. Maybe put me in a martial arts class. Something. Help me calm down. Instead, I got a happy pill. And I was more scared and upset than I was sad. I appeared sad. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of energy because I wasn't sleeping. And that's because my nervous system was stuck in fight, and I always had to be prepared for the next attack because who knows what my father was gonna find out or come up with. Um, anyway, so that made sleep really, really hard, and eventually led to me being prescribed benzos. Uh, so you probably heard of Xanax. Well, I was on Klonopin, which was like an 8-hour Xanax, and Ativan, and Halcyon. And on the plus side, it gave me some stability, and it gave me an opportunity to become a coach and become a personal trainer and everything. And then I started feeling like an imposter because what kind of coach is taking narcotics to sleep? And that led to me tabling my coaching business for a long time because as I was coming off of these medications, you could see the trauma underneath, and that led to me going for and getting help for my trauma eventually. And what happened, and so I'm really grateful. Um, but what had happened was my best friend married a therapist, and And so we became friendly. And one day she just pulled me to the side and said, listen, your inability to sleep the way it is for you, that's not depression. That's trauma. And then she also told me about Dr. Amen. So now I knew what was wrong. And then she said, this guy, Dr. Amen, you might want to check him out. He's amazing. He's Dr. Amen, for those of you that don't know, he's famous for discovering 7 different types of ADD. And the way that he did that, he uses this tool to take pictures of the brain called brain spect imaging. Um, and what he found out over the years, Dr. Amen been taking pictures of the brain since the 90s, is that 79% of the people that get their brain scanned get a new diagnosis. 79% of the time. Um, and so what happened was after he's done hundreds and thousands of these brain spect images, he reverse engineered the result for assessments to determine a person's brain type. And once you know the person's brain type, then you know what supplements based upon what areas of the brain are affected to create a customized supplement regimen. So I'm certified through him, and that's one of the things that I'm able to do. So with that, that is my offer, is to get the brain type assessment, and I'll create a customized supplement regimen for you. You would just have to go to, if there's a way that I could set this up so you get it by registering, I will. But if not, Dave Jacks, DAVEJACKS.com. Sometimes it get a little funny if it doesn't work right, put www in front of it, but then you'll see, take the brain type assessment, click on the link, you'll take the assessment, and then schedule a call for us to go over the results and for me to come up with a supplement regimen for you. Um, and so really my approach is assess, address, and manifest. So after finding, and I'm going to come back to that. So after finding out that trauma was my issue, I found this place called C Reset, and I started getting treatments from them. It's brain echo audio technology. I know that's weird, but they listen to your brain waves and play it back to you, and your brain sort of levels up. But it was contraindicated to my medication, and I had to come off my medication, or to some degree. And then I was making progress, and I was so excited. I went off all of my medication too quickly. And I woke up one morning in a full body fit that I can never replicate. It was like every emotion to the nth degree at the same time, arms and legs swinging. And then out of the corner of my eye was the biggest, brightest, most powerful sun I ever saw in my life. And I'm telling you, that was gone. And it was exhilarating and terrifying. Um, and then in the background was the biggest, most beautiful park with the nurturing female energy, and that was Mother Nature. And then there was a third entity that there was no visual. It was like a whisper, and it just kept whispering forgiveness because I had worked really hard at trying to forgive my father. And the way I did that was I came up with this thing called, this philosophy, if you will, the accidental abuser. And what I mean by that is that my dad didn't, he wasn't deliberately abusive. He just didn't have the self-awareness and the capacity to do anything about it because he didn't get the help he needed after his mother killed herself. And putting that perspective, uh, let me see him as he was hurt, and that's why he treated me the way he did, and that, and that's what was part of. Let me forgive him, but um, forgiveness takes time. But if you truly want transformation, if you want to become your best self, um, you need that. Um, let's see. Um, so yeah, so that's what happened with that. Um, and that born again experience, I absolutely knew I was going to heal. And it took me a minute to get consistent and integrated and grounded, but I'm so 28 years it took me to get a different diagnosis than depression. I was not going to allow Western medicine to define me and excuse my father's abuse. Um, and going back to that calm first, if not, you're making them worse. The vast majority of us, we're like me. When we go to a psychiatrist, we're upset and we get happy pills and made worse. Maybe you're not at the extent that I was or whatever, but we've also adapted this theory, right? Epigenetics. Everybody's on board with epigenetics, and epigenetics says that we're born with the DNA, for our family's bloodline of mental health and addiction, whatever issues, but those genes don't have to be activated. They're only activated if something happens. And when something happens, we call it trauma or an adverse childhood experiences. And if we know that's what needs to happen to turn on the genes, then everyone needs to be treated for trauma and work on their trauma first and then address what's left. So if you're going to get calm first, you need to address trauma first, regardless of your diagnoses. Your diagnoses was made off a guidebook, not somebody looking at your brain. And so that's what, so like I said, anyway, even with me, I did the assessment, Dr. Ames assessment, when I had my brain scan because I wanted to hear somebody tell me that I'm not bipolar, and it was glorious. But you don't need to spend that kind of money. My supplement regimen with that I made off the assessment, it was barely changed. It was like one or two really minor changes. And that's why he has the assessment and the coaching program, because not everybody has $5,000 to pay to get pictures of their brain. And also with the um, and a little bit on codependence and attachment issues, and this other. I'm going to give you more of a spiritual background or another way of looking at mental illness, and then we'll get going. And that is just that if you think of it this way, 9 months before you came out, your parents did what? They made love. So that makes you love. And then upon entering the world, you knew that you were loved and you were meant to receive love by your parents. And then something happened that made you feel not good enough or abandoned or whatever. And when that occurred, um, you thought it was something wrong with you, and you kept trying to prove yourself and prove to others your worth rather than caring for your own self. And then you didn't get to grow and develop the way you were meant to. Um, and I refer to it as spiritual abuse because when that happens, there's separation between you and the source energy that's within you that you were born with, right? And so what I look to do is reconnect people to their higher power. Um, and I told you about Dr. Amen and his philosophy. I also went to coaching school and I'm certified core energy coach based on 7 levels of energy. Um, and that is the seven, I'll give you the seven levels real quick. And that is victim, anger, forgiveness, compassion, peace, synergy, and absolute passion or God. Um, and so what I do is that's what we do. We start working with you on each of those levels so you level up. And that's it. If you could become one with your higher power, right? and then balance your brain with supplements, you're essentially no longer mentally ill. So go to davejacks.com, www.davejacks.com, and take the assessment, and I'll come up with something great for you. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much my time. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you guys did, and I can't wait to contribute to you. Thank you.